Jameson was 48, and life had mellowed into a quiet rhythm. Each morning, just after sunrise, he'd take his metal detector and walk the beaches of the small island where he'd moved a few years back to escape the noise of the world. That day, the breeze was light, and the sea shimmered under a pale golden sky. His detector hummed lazily, like it usually did, occasional beeps, some rusted bottle caps, a few coins tourists had lost. Then it happened. A long, sharp, continuous tone blared through his headphones. Not a coin. Not a can. Something massive. The signal was unlike anything he'd ever heard in all his years scanning beaches and abandoned fields. He marked the spot and began digging. First with a small spade, then with his hands. The sand was soft at first, but soon he hit something dense. Metallic. Cold. He kept digging for over an hour, sweat dripping from his forehead, heart pounding with excitement. But the thing was deep, too deep. It was getting dark when he finally stood up, hands aching, and stared at the small hole he'd made. Whatever it was huge. And it wasn't going anywhere without help. He brushed the sand off his knees, glanced once more at the spot, and muttered. "I'll be back tomorrow. With bigger tools." He didn't know it yet, but he had just touched the edge of a mystery that would put his name in history. The next morning, Jameson was at the beach before sunrise, eyes puffy from lack of sleep, heart racing with anticipation. He had barely slept. His mind kept spinning, what if it's a shipwreck? Military gear? A crate of gold? But the thing was too deep to reach by hand. He needed help. He walked into the small village square and found Luis, a weathered local who owned a beat-up but powerful tractor. They'd shared beers before, talked about storms and fishing. Jameson got straight to the point. "I need you to dig something up." "Something big?" Luis raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "Treasure hunting again, viejo?" Jameson grinned. "This time it's different." An hour later, the rusty old tractor was rolling down the beach. The engine coughed, the tires sank slightly into the soft sand, but it held. Jameson guided Luis to the spot he'd marked with driftwood the day before. Luis climbed down and looked around. "You sure about this?" "Dead sure." The digging began. Scoop after scoop, the hole widened. The sand gave way to packed soil. Then, a thud. The shovel had hit metal. Luis shut off the engine. Both men stood silently, staring down. There, just visible beneath the surface, was something smooth, curved, and painted white. Jameson's breath caught in his throat. He knelt down, wiped the dirt away with shaking hands, and froze. What he saw wasn't a ship. It wasn't a container. It was a wing. Jameson couldn't sleep that night. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan slowly slicing the silence. His heart still echoed the beeping from his metal detector. He knew, whatever was under that sand, it wasn't garbage. It wasn't a can, or an anchor, or some tourist's old ring. It was big. Too big. At 5:17 a.m., he got up, made coffee, and stood barefoot on the porch, looking out at the sea. Mist hung low over the water. The beach stretched beyond, quiet and waiting. He knew one thing, he wasn't giving up. "If I walk away now, I'll never forgive myself." By 7 a.m., Jameson was in the village square, sun already burning the rooftops. Dogs barked, someone played a scratchy radio, and a rooster made its late declaration of the morning. He headed straight to a weathered shack with rusted tools hanging on the walls, the domain of Luis Ortega. Luis was nearing 70, with hands like sandpaper and a stubbornness that could stop a tide. He owned the only functioning tractor on the island, an old green monster named Catalina. Jameson knocked. "Luis. I need a favor." Luis leaned in the doorway, chewing the end of a matchstick. "Trouble or treasure?" "Could be both." Luis agreed, mostly because he liked the idea of a buried mystery, and partly because Jameson promised to buy him 2 rounds at the tavern that night. They loaded shovels and water bottles into the tractor, and Catalina growled to life. The ride down was bumpy, the tires leaving deep tracks in the sand. As they rolled closer to the marked spot, Jameson's stomach tightened. The beach was completely empty, save for the wind and the memory of yesterday's signal. Luis killed the engine. The silence was thick. "This it?" he asked. Jameson nodded. "This is where the ground screamed." They started digging. Luis handled the machine like an artist, scooping sand in slow, precise bites. Jameson stood nearby, palms sweating, eyes locked on every shift in the soil. The third scoop brought up something hard. Metal. But it was deep, at least 3 meters down. Luis climbed down, examined the edge of what they'd uncovered, and muttered, "This ain't no boat." More digging. The object grew larger, smoother. Curved lines. A strange shimmer where paint had once been. Jameson scraped away a layer of packed sand with his hands. And then he saw it, a sliver of white, clean and polished. As they cleared more sand, something emerged, a logo. It was partially scratched off, but unmistakable. A falcon, wings spread, cast in gold. Jameson's blood ran cold. He knew that emblem. Everyone did. Falcon Star 1. Nathan Hallberg's private jet. 12 years ago, it vanished mid-flight. Vanished, as in off the radar. As in, no debris. No radio signal. No black box. Nothing. Until now. Luis stepped back, whispering, "You serious right now?" Jameson could only nod. Jameson sat down, hard, in the sand. His hands trembled. His mouth felt dry. He was looking at history. A decade-old global mystery, buried under his island all along. "How?" he muttered. "How did no one ever find this?" Luis knelt beside him. "This spot? No one comes here. Too far for tourists. Too quiet for locals." Jameson stared at the wing. He didn't want to believe it, but every inch of it confirmed it. The jet was real. The mystery was real. And now it was his. Back in town, Jameson borrowed a secure line at the mayor's office. This wasn't something for social media. Not yet. The operator on the other end paused after hearing the words, "Falcon Star 1. Then, stay where you are. Do not touch anything else. Authorities will arrive by morning." Jameson hung up slowly. He knew what that meant, silence. Secrecy. And that everything was about to change. When he returned to the beach, Luis was still there, watching the hole like it might get up and walk away. Jameson sat next to him. Neither of them spoke. The only sound was the wind, and Catalina's ticking engine, cooling down from the dig of the decade. They stayed by the site until sunset. As the last rays dipped below the water, Jameson noticed something odd. There were no birds. No sounds. No waves. Just a dead, unnatural stillness. And then, a faint hum. Barely audible. Coming from the wreck itself. Luis stood up. "You hear that?" Jameson did. And it was coming from beneath the fuselage. Something was still active. Still running. Still alive. Luis stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow. "Is that what I think it is?" he asked, voice low. Jameson didn't answer. He couldn't. He was staring at the edge of the wing, partially buried, but unmistakable. Not just a plane, a private jet. They kept digging, revealing more, broken glass, twisted metal, a tail section scorched black as if it had caught fire. The logo was barely visible, a golden falcon with 2 spread wings. Jameson's stomach turned. He'd seen that emblem before, on news reports years ago. The Falcon Star 1, the jet of billionaire tech mogul Nathan Hallberg. The man who vanished 12 years ago mid-flight. No wreckage. No clues. Just disappeared off radar. Until now. Jameson took a slow step back and whispered, "This is going to change everything." The officials arrived just after dawn. Four black SUVs with tinted windows rolled quietly onto the sand, tires crunching in the silence. A helicopter hovered far above the beach, like a silent vulture waiting for its moment. Jameson stood back as men and women in dark windbreakers surrounded the dig site. Some set up small tents, others began taking photos. Luis stayed by his tractor, arms crossed, watching them with narrowed eyes. Jameson couldn't stop staring at the uncovered metal. It didn't feel like just a plane anymore. It felt like a grave. One of the agents approached Jameson. Tall, clean-cut, clipboard in hand. Government type, no doubt. "Mr. Jameson. You found this wreck?" "Yes." "And you're certain it hasn't been tampered with since discovery?" Aside from the digging, nothing was touched. The agent scribbled something. Then handed him a photograph. It was a blurry satellite image, dated 12 years ago. Same beach. But in the photo, the wreck wasn't there. Jameson blinked. "What is this supposed to mean?" "We're trying to figure that out," the agent replied. "So far, it doesn't make sense." Later that afternoon, the excavation team opened a path into the fuselage. Jameson, though technically not supposed to, was allowed to accompany one of the forensic techs inside, perhaps out of respect, or perhaps because no one wanted to argue with the man who'd started this all. The air inside was heavy. Stale. Pressurized in a way that made Jameson's ears pop slightly. The cabin was pristine, eerily so. Not a single seatbelt unbuckled. No shattered glass. No luggage. But worse than that. No bodies. Pilot's seat, empty. Passenger seats, untouched. Not a single sign that anyone had ever been on board. In the cockpit, an old leather-bound flight log lay tucked under the main console. One of the techs opened it, flipping through the last few entries. Jameson watched closely. Most of it was routine, takeoff times, airspeed, coordinates. But the final entry? Just a single word, written in increasingly frantic handwriting. Distortion. Jameson shivered. He had no idea what it meant. But it didn't sound like something from this earth. That night, Jameson sat by a bonfire near the beach with Luis. The moon was full. The site was now heavily guarded, lit with floodlights. "Maybe there were survivors," Luis said, tossing a small stick into the flames. "They couldn't have gone far," Jameson replied. "If they walked inland, someone would have found them. It's an island." Luis said nothing for a moment, then quietly added, "What if they were taken?" Jameson looked at him. "Taken by who?" Luis didn't answer. Instead, he pointed toward the stars. Jameson couldn't sleep again. At around 2 a.m., he walked back down to the site alone, ignoring the guard's disapproving glance. He stood by the open jet, flashlight in hand. Something called to him. Not audibly, it was deeper. A kind of mental pull. A whisper inside his bones. He climbed inside the fuselage. And that's when he saw it. Under one of the last seats, a backpack. Torn, faded. Inside, a cracked satellite phone. Dead. And a torn page from a notebook. On it, scrawled hastily. "They knew we were coming. We were never supposed to land." The next morning, one of the federal techs found something incredible. The plane's black box, or rather, its encrypted backup system, had survived, though damaged. Over the next few hours, a special data team managed to extract fragments. What they found was chilling. Unexplained turbulence. Altitude dropping rapidly. Screaming from the cockpit. Then, silence. And finally, a long, high-pitched hum that continued until the recording cut out. Jameson heard it once, through headphones. It shook him to the core. "That sound," he whispered. "That's what I heard at the beach. Before we finished digging." Luis looked at him. "You sure it's not still there?" By the end of the week, the plane was being carefully disassembled and prepped for removal. Jameson watched the operation from a distance. Everyone moved with urgency, but also fear, like the plane might wake up if they disturbed it too much. And just before the last wing section was lifted, something slid out from a crack in the underbelly. It was a personal effects case, government grade. Inside, a sealed envelope marked, "For Nathan Hallberg only." They gave it to Jameson to hold until higher authorities arrived. He turned it over in his hands. And on the back, in faded marker, someone had written, "If you're reading this, it means I failed." They taped the area off and hiked to the village. Jameson made a call to the island's police station, choosing his words carefully. By evening, a perimeter was set. Officials arrived. A forensic team landed the next morning by helicopter. Jameson watched from a distance as they unearthed the rest of the wreckage. He felt disconnected. Like he wasn't part of reality anymore, but standing inside a history book as it was being written. Later that day, an officer approached him. "Mr. Jameson, we found something. You should see it." They led him down to the cockpit. The door was mangled, but what lay inside was worse. The pilot's seat was empty. And in the back, no passengers. The jet was empty. Completely. Jameson stared in silence, a chill crawling up his spine. 12 years missing, and no bodies. Back at his small house near the edge of the village, Jameson sat in silence, holding the sealed envelope they'd handed him, the one labeled "For Nathan Hallberg only." He hadn't opened it. He couldn't. It felt radioactive. Like the kind of thing you don't look at unless you're prepared to never sleep again. He set it on the table. The power flickered. The light bulb above him pulsed once, twice, and went out. At the same moment, his phone, dead for hours, buzzed once, all on its own. No number. Just a single notification. "We saw it too." By morning, the island was buzzing. Locals whispered in doorways, fishermen canceled outings, and even the tourists, what few had stayed, were starting to ask questions. One old woman stopped Jameson in the street. She touched his hand, her eyes pale and cloudy. "It came back," she whispered. 12 years ago, I saw the sky ripple like water. I knew it would come back." Jameson tried to shake it off, but her voice stuck with him. She hadn't asked what it was. She just knew. That afternoon, a secure government line rang at the village office. It was for Jameson. The voice on the other end was smooth, official, and disturbingly polite. "Mr. Jameson. This is Agent Moore, Office of National Strategic Intelligence." Jameson blinked. "That's a real agency." "It is now." Pause. Then. "We need you to come with us. There are people you need to meet. And something you need to see." "When?" "Your plane leaves in 2 hours." The line went dead. Jameson was escorted to a private airstrip on the other side of the island. The jet was sleek, matte black, unmarked. Inside, silence. No windows. 2 agents sat across from him, not speaking. The moment they took off, Jameson realized something: there was no turbulence. No engine roar. Just a low vibration, like a machine humming in thought. It didn't feel like flying. It felt like being transported. After an hour, the plane began to descend, straight into fog. And then it landed. He didn't know where he was. But the air smelled of pine, and the stars were unfamiliar. They brought him into a glass-walled room. Agent Moore waited inside, standing by a digital table displaying the wreck. "We've matched serial numbers," Moore said. "It is Hallberg's plane. But the black box data is inconsistent." Jameson frowned. "How?" "The final location registered was over the Pacific. And then, suddenly, it was off the coast of your island. Like it jumped." Moore leaned in. "We believe something happened in the sky that night. Something not accounted for by physics as we know it." Then he added, "You're not the first to report that sound, Jameson. But you might be the first to survive it." As the interview ended, another agent entered, younger, tense. He whispered something to Moore, who nodded slowly. Moore turned back to Jameson. "There's someone here who wants to speak with you. Privately." Jameson followed them down a narrow hallway into a quiet, sterile room. Sitting alone was a tall, tired man with streaks of silver in his beard. When he turned to look up at Jameson, everything inside him froze. "My name is Noah Hallberg," the man said. "Nathan was my brother." Noah sat back down, fingers clasped tightly together. "My brother wasn't just a billionaire," he said quietly. "He was obsessed with something he called the curve." Jameson raised an eyebrow. "Like in physics?" Noah shook his head. "Like a place. He believed there were rips, folds in space. Tiny glitches where the rules change. He thought the plane could find one. Slip through it." "And, did it?" Jameson asked. Noah looked him dead in the eyes. "If it didn't, then why did his jet land 12 years later, without a scratch, and without him? They flew him back 2 days later. Quietly. No press. But the world already knew. Photos of the wreck had leaked. News sites speculated wildly: aliens, time travel, deep state cover-ups. The truth didn't matter anymore. The story had already grown teeth of its own. Jameson was called to a government facility in D.C. where he was awarded a Civilian Commendation Medal for aiding in the discovery of an international aviation event of strategic significance. It felt empty. Until he got back to his hotel. On the nightstand was a plain white envelope. No sender. Inside, a single USB stick. And a note that read, "Play this only when you're ready to follow him." 2 days later, under a broken seat, investigators found something odd: a leather-bound notebook, weathered but intact. One of the agents handed it to Jameson. "You found the jet. This might mean something to you." He opened it. Most pages were blank. Until the last 5. Written in shaky handwriting, one phrase repeated. "They're watching. The sky is not ours." Again. And again. And on the final page, coordinates. Somewhere deep in the South Pacific. Jameson looked up. What the hell was Hallberg into? Back in his hotel room, Jameson stared at the USB stick lying on the table. He hadn't touched it in hours. He'd walked to the window, paced the room, poured himself water, sat down, stood up again. And yet, it called to him. When he finally inserted it into his laptop, the screen flickered. A single video file opened, no title. He clicked play. A grainy recording began, static-filled, like something from an old VHS. A man's face appeared. Nathan Hallberg. "If you're seeing this. I didn't make it back." Jameson leaned forward, heart hammering. In the video, Nathan looked haggard. Pale. Sweating. His eyes darted around as if watching something just outside the camera's view. "There's something out there," he said. "Something in the sky. We didn't hit turbulence, we hit a wall. A shimmer. And then, we weren't in the sky anymore." He wiped his face, voice trembling. Time doesn't move the same way. I don't know how long we were gone. Days? Minutes? Years? Then he leaned closer to the camera and whispered. They're not from another planet. They're from between. The screen went black. Shaken, Jameson opened the notebook recovered from the wreck. Most of it was blank, except for 5 frantic pages. The handwriting was different. Smaller. Rushed. Scrawled across the pages, over and over. They're watching. The sky is not ours. Then a final page, a crude sketch of an island chain, with GPS coordinates scribbled beside it. He quickly typed them into his laptop. Location, South Pacific. Hundreds of miles from any known land. Nothing was there. Not even satellite imaging. He stared at the red dot blinking on the map and muttered. So where the hell were you going? Later that night, Jameson received a call. Blocked number. Just static at first. Then, a voice. Whispering. He wasn't the only one. The line cut. He froze. Who else survived? Was this a prank? A warning? Or something else entirely? He played Hallberg's video again. This time, watching the background more closely. And then he saw it. A shadow, moving behind Nathan. Human-like. Slender. But, wrong. The next day, Agent Moore summoned Jameson again, this time to a high-security underground facility outside Langley. In a sterile conference room, Moore dropped a thick folder onto the table. You want answers? Here's what we have. Inside were files labeled with red stamps, unconfirmed, eyes only, anomaly incident 12-04. Photos. A jet caught mid-air, seemingly vanishing. A radar screen showing blips stuttering like a broken clock. A thermal image of a heat signature in the sky, shaped like an eye. One handwritten note stood out. Subject may not have returned alone. That evening, Jameson boarded a black SUV with Moore and 2 other agents. They drove through dense forest to a small, forgotten cabin deep in the Shenandoah Mountains. Inside, a single occupant. She looked ordinary. Early 40s. Faded hoodie. Nervous eyes. My name is Marin. I was on the plane. Jameson nearly dropped his bag. That's not possible. We crashed. But we didn't crash here. We crashed somewhere else. They let me go. I think they let me go to deliver a message. What message? She pointed to the sky. We're not supposed to fly that high. Before they left the cabin, Marin handed Jameson a folded piece of paper. A map. But not of Earth, not exactly. It showed 5 concentric circles, each labeled with names that weren't real places: Fold Line, The Drop, Gray Horizon, Zone Echo, and finally, in the center, the curve. Nathan thought if he reached the curve, he could prove something. That time is a loop. That reality folds inward. Jameson stared at it. And what happens when you cross it? Marin looked away. You either come back, or something else does. Back in his hotel, Jameson spread everything out on the bed. The notebook. The flash drive. Marin's map. The coordinates. He didn't know what was waiting at that red dot in the South Pacific. But he knew he was going. Not for fame. Not for medals. For truth. He whispered to himself. Whatever's out there, we've already opened the door. Outside, lightning split the sky. And somewhere deep in the static of the night, his phone vibrated again. No number. Just one word. Soon. 3 days passed. Journalists swarmed the island. Jameson gave a single press statement. The government kept the rest quiet. Then came the visit. A man in a gray suit showed up at Jameson's door. "We're with Homeland. You've done your country a service," he said, flatly. "But we'll be taking it from here." Jameson didn't argue, he knew how this worked. But as the man turned to leave, he added, "One more thing. Mr. Hallberg's family asked for you personally. They'd like to meet." Jameson blinked. "Why?" "They said he always believed someone would find the truth. You were the one who did." Jameson finally opened the envelope marked for Nathan Hallberg only. His hands trembled as he unfolded the pages. Inside, 3 items. A handwritten letter. A sketch of an object that looked like a giant metallic ring floating above the ocean. And a sealed strip of film marked Project, Cycle Gate. The letter read, "They showed me the other side. It wasn't meant for humans. I tried to map it. Failed. If I vanish, follow the pattern." The sketch had coordinates drawn beneath it. They were the same coordinates from the notebook. Jameson's mouth went dry. Nathan hadn't crashed. He'd gone somewhere. That night, a knock came at his hotel room door. 2 agents. Sharp suits. Neutral expressions. The taller one spoke first. "Mr. Jameson. We've been instructed to escort you. Someone very high up wants a word." Jameson grabbed his bag instinctively. "Where are we going?" The second agent only said, "Underground." They took him to a nondescript black van and drove in silence. 30 minutes later, they entered a service tunnel that went down. Deep. Far beyond normal infrastructure. Jameson had the creeping feeling he was descending into a place he might not be allowed to leave. At the bottom of the tunnel, a stark white chamber. In the center, a single round table. A woman sat at it, dressed in a gray tactical coat, her face both calm and unreadable. Her badge read, Director S. Roth. "You've seen more than most," she said. "But we've seen farther." She tapped the table, bringing up a holographic projection of Hallberg's jet, hovering in midair, then disappearing. This wasn't a crash. It was a jump. A window opened. And something let them through. She looked him straight in the eyes. "We want you to go through next." Roth slid a folder across the table. Project, Cycle Gate. Inside, satellite photos, sonar scans, temperature maps, and one blurry image of what looked like a massive ring beneath the ocean, glowing faintly blue. "We believe it activates every 13 years. For a few hours only." "And the next cycle?" Jameson asked. 5 days. She continued. "We've sent drones. None came back. The only way to find out what's on the other side, is to go." Jameson's pulse thundered in his ears. "And you want me to do that?" Roth smiled faintly. "You found the door, Mr. Jameson. It only seems fair you be the first to knock." 2 days later, Jameson met the others. A 5-person team. Each hand-picked. Dr. Kira Ellman, theoretical physicist, specialist in space-time folds. Major Reyes, Special Forces, former Black Ops. Theo, AI technician with a nervous laugh and a mind like a maze. Marin, the woman from the wreck, now quiet, but focused. She was going back. "You sure you're ready?" Jameson asked her. "I've had 12 years to get ready." Each of them carried something personal. Jameson noticed. A photo. A ring. A charm. As if they knew, once they stepped through, they might not return. They didn't go by plane. Instead, they were taken to a classified marine base where a modified submersible craft waited. Sleek. Silent. Lined with arcane-looking panels and biometric locks. They called it Aurelia. Theo ran his hands over the hull. "This thing has materials I've never seen before. Not military. Not civilian. Something else. Inside, the cockpit pulsed with dim blue light. As Jameson stepped aboard, the air hummed. A vibration in his chest, like déjà vu mixed with vertigo. Marin stood beside him, pale. It feels the same. As what? As the space between places. The night before launch, the crew sat together in the mess room. A strange, forced calm settled over them. Dr. Ellman passed around a page, Hallberg's curve map, now annotated. If this map's right, we'll enter the fold zone first. That's where physics starts, bending. She pointed to the center. Then, we hit the curve. After that? Unknown territory. Reyes snorted. Sounds like a vacation. Theo whispered. We're not coming back, are we? Everyone fell silent. Jameson broke it finally. If we do, we bring answers. If we don't, someone else follows next. Launch day. The sky was clear, ocean calm, almost too calm. The Aurelia was lowered into the water. Jameson stood at the viewport, watching the surface grow distant, light swallowed by the dark. At 800 meters, a low-frequency pulse hit the ship. Once. Then again. Louder. Dr. Ellman said, "We've crossed the fold line." The lights flickered. Instruments glitched. Static filled the radio. And then, a shape appeared in the dark. A perfect metallic ring, rotating slowly. The same shape from Nathan's sketch. Aurelia drifted toward it, drawn like a moth to flame. As they approached, Marin whispered. We're not alone. A month later, Jameson stood in front of a small crowd in Washington, D.C. An official placed a medal over his head, national recognition for civilian service and discovery of key evidence in an international disappearance. Cameras flashed. People applauded. But Jameson? He only thought about that notebook. They're watching. The sky is not ours. That night, in his hotel room, he stared at the coordinates again. He pulled up a map on his laptop. Nothing there. No islands. No flight paths. Just empty ocean. But something inside him whispered, go. 2 months later, Jameson was back on a boat. No fanfare. No press. Just a quiet captain, a map, and the notebook. They reached the coordinates just after midnight. The sea was still. The stars above clear, too clear. And then, the compass started spinning. Jameson stood at the bow, notebook in hand, staring into the dark water. Suddenly, beneath the surface, something glowed, a massive shape, like a ring, turning slowly. A low hum vibrated through the boat. And Jameson, heart pounding, whispered. Hallberg was right. Jameson was never seen again. But 6 weeks later, a package arrived at Luis's doorstep, no return address. Inside, a sealed envelope, a photo of Jameson smiling on a boat, and a simple message on the back. We're not alone. I saw it. Keep watching the sky. Luis looked up at the night sky, clutching the photo, eyes wide. The stars blinked. One moved.